Hello students, let us continue our discussion regarding chapter mineral nutrition. In the previous class, the previous sessions, we were discussing regarding micronutrients as well as macronutrients. It was a macronutrient is the as well as micronutrients, yes, okay. And 9 macronutrients, 8 micronutrients, their absorptive form, their functions, everything we understood. Later, we spoke regarding the critical concentration. If that particular concentration is not given to plants, then plant growth gets retarded. There was 2 categories of the elements, one is called the mobile and immobile. Calcium and sulfur, since they are structural elements, they come under immobile elements. They become part of the senescence leaves. They do not move to the young leaves. Both are a repeat question. If you see the chapter mineral nutrition where you see sulfur in the category of mobile, no, you please remember calcium and sulfur both as immobile. In 2014 JIPMER appeared question it is, where sulfur is the right answer. And later we discussed regarding the deficiency symptoms, chlorosis, necrosis and delay in flowering and inhibition of cell division, all these we had discussed, and some of the way of remembering also we had given. Today, in today's session also we require those informations. I will be asking you, as I ask you should be able to give me the answer. So, I do not have any questions here. Straight away we are beginning a chapter today's session, and the topic which we are discussing is called as toxicity of micronutrients. Toxicity of micronutrients. See carefully here students, toxicity. We will go for the photograph later. Toxicity, this toxicity is with regard to what is the question? It is with regard to micronutrients. Micronutrients, that is very important. You know that the macronutrients are required in a concentration in excess of 10 millimoles per kg of the dry matter. If it is more also, there is no much problem in the case of macronutrients, but if it is the micronutrients, then it is a problem. Why? Because the micronutrients, if they are more, if they are given more, then it leads to toxicity. Toxicity. If it is given less, then it leads to deficiency. How difficult, right? If it is less, leads to deficiency. If it is given more, it leads to toxicity. So, I can tell the requirement of the micronutrients, requirement of micronutrients, or a critical level of the micronutrient is a narrow range. It is a narrow range. This word has to be noted down, means important one is requirement of which one is a narrow range. Requirement of micronutrient is a narrow range, because if it is a more, it leads to toxicity. If it is a less, it leads to the deficiency symptom. Clear, right? Okay. Now, interesting point I will tell you one. The macronutrients, if they are more also, it is okay, we told, but sometimes since you add more amount of macronutrients, the soil can become acidic, because around the neutral soil is better for absorption of minerals. When a soil become acidic, that leads to problem. One of that I am giving example. The example which I am going to give is called manganese toxicity. Manganese toxicity. So, what is this aspect? Let us discuss now manganese toxicity. M, N, 2 plus divalent. It is a way of absorption of manganese. First of all, manganese toxicity, what is the reason for it? Reason. The reason for the manganese toxicity is preferably, one is acidic soil, second is a water logging, Let me explain one by one now. First of all, acidic soil. Since some macronutrients are added more, since maybe oxides of nitrogen, if oxides of nitrogen is becoming more in the atmosphere, we call the oxides of nitrogen as a NOx. NOx means oxides of nitrogen is more in the atmosphere, which can react to the water, and that will be precipitated as a HNO3, means nitric acid, and nitric acid is acidic in nature, right? Or else it can be a oxides of sulfur, SOx, which is reacting with the water and which is precipitating as H2SO4, means sulfuric acid. So these are the acids. So these acids can make the soil acidic. That is a very few example I give. Remaining also can make the soil acidic. So since some of the macronutrients added more, that also can make the soil acidic. Because of that acidic nature, the manganese absorption becomes more than a requirement. Very beautiful concepts are there. If you remember, I'll tell you what is that. Okay. In the roots, there is a presence of, you know, that the epidermis. The root hairs are there. Agree? After root hair, there is a presence of cortex. You know, cortex layers are there. Then there is the presence of the endodermis, which is the innermost layer of the cortex, endodermis. Okay. After the endodermis, then is the presence of pericycle. Okay. Then there is a xylem. Clear, students? Okay. Now the question is, the minerals which is absorbed can enter the cell in two ways, which is already discussed, symplast and apoplast, which will be discussed later once again. Okay, fine. But after they reach to here called endodermis, when they reach to endodermis, then the movement to the xylem is regulated. So we tell endodermis is the control point. Endodermis is the control point which regulates which mineral has to go and which mineral it should be, which quantity also has to enter into xylem, because after reaching to xylem it is going to be a mass flow there. Clear, students? So endodermis is a control point, but if endodermis has to act as a control point, there should be requirement of a specific pH around there. That's very important. So the acidic pH, if there is acidic pH, then absorption of manganese can increase. First point. Second point, water logging. I told you, water logging. What is the meaning of water logging? See, students, after the Green Revolution in India, before that the orthodox methods were used for irrigation purpose. After Green Revolution, irrigation system increased, means the quality and the use of technology was more. But what happens sometimes is, In the plantation, it's a plantation, see this plantation, here we have grown the plants, and here is a pit made, pit, and in the pit plants are growing. If there should be a drainage system for each pit, drainage system should be there, drainage. By chance, if a drainage system is not there, then the problem occurs. By chance, if a drainage system is not there, then in the pit, the water starts becoming stagnant. It's called water logging. What happens because of water logging? Let me tell you, listen carefully. It's a soil, it's a plant, root here, and I told you the water is getting logged, water logging takes place. It's a water. So, because of the water logging, the minerals starts dissolving, which is present in the soil. Soil is a reservoir of minerals. As the mineral starts dissolving and dissolving, mineral comes to surface of the soil. See, surface of soil. As the mineral concentration goes on increasing surface of soil, in the soil, the solute concentration means concentration solute concentration goes on increasing. Solute concentration goes on increasing, and because of that, depending on the solute, the pH can reduce. pH can reduce, 1 point. Whereas solute concentration is going on increasing, then the surrounding soil has become hypertonic. Soil should have less mineral compared to root. Root cell should have more mineral for proper absorption of the specific minerals. But here what is happening? The root cell has less mineral, soil has more mineral, then absorption gets impaired. Some not required element like manganese, whose concentration should be less in the cell, whose absorption becomes more and more. Water logging means accumulation of water leads to dissolving of the minerals to the surface, it forms a crust, and solute concentration increases, because of which the not required minerals, their absorption goes on increasing. Best example is a manganese here. Okay. So, the manganese absorption can increase in two ways, I told you. One is by the acidic soil, second is by water logging. Okay. So, we mentioned what is the reason for the manganese to be increased. Now, what is the symptom of it? Symptom of the manganese toxicity, how it is appear. What exactly happens is in the green leaf, on the green leaf, it's a green leaf, slowly the portions of the leaf starts becoming yellow, preferably the veins starts becoming yellow. So, it is called as chlorotic vein, chlorotic vein, and around the chlorotic vein region there will be necrotic regions, means a brown spot starts appearing, brown spots. So, the brown spots, so the chlorotic vein and surrounded by brown spot, so right here chlorotic vein and surrounded by brown spot is a reason for is the symptom of manganese toxicity. Just what is the reason for both of these? Let us understand. Before that, brown spot is because of necrosis, and a chlorotic vein is because chlorosis. And you already have a idea the reason for necrosis. The way of remembering, we told kids call mama cute is a way of remembering regarding the deficiency of these mineral leads to necrosis. And if I come to the chlorosis, it is the M square magnesium, the manganese, monks, molybdenum, nitrogen, potassium, sulfur and Fez, zinc. So, we remember M square monks Fez is a way of remembering the. So, these all leads to, if these are less, it leads to the deficiency of the deficiency leads to chlorosis, and this leads to the necrosis. We will relate these later. Before that, symptoms we understood now. Because of symptoms, what happens? The yield of plant goes on reducing. How much yield of plant reduces by 10% of dry matter. Yield of plant goes on reducing by 10% dry matter. If it is decreases by 10%, the meaning that the plant is suffering from toxicity, and that toxicity which I am discussing is called as manganese toxicity here. Till now things are very clear, I think, for you. I will tell you once again the manganese toxicity because of acidic soil or the waterlogging, where manganese absorption becomes more than required because manganese is a micronutrient and it is required in the less quantity. Okay, if you remember, manganese is required for respiration, photosynthesis is required, and manganese is an important element we told in the case of photolysis of the water also. It is important, but its quantity required less amount. Okay. Chlorotic vein brown spot is a symptom of it, and yield of the plant will reduce by 10% of dry matter. Now, I will move on, students. A little more has to be explained regarding the manganese toxicity. What is that? See, students, when a manganese becomes more, then some mineral absorption, some other minerals absorption gets impaired, like magnesium, iron, calcium. Means when a manganese is more, this absorption becomes less. Please remember the way I remember it, tell you. When the mango becomes more, means season of the mango, and mango is the king of fruits, we tell, and mango is more now. When a mango is more, before the mango was there, we used to like Maggi, but now the mango is more, so the Maggi you don't like much. So when a mango is more, the Maggi means what? Magnesium. The magnesium feca means threw. You threw Maggi, threw means you did not use it. Why to throw? Okay. When a mango becomes more, magnesium is Maggi, you threw it. Feca means you threw it. So this is a way of remembering regarding the manganese toxicity. The way of remembering, students, there are two ways of remembering always this kind of chapter. One is keep writing, with that you can remember, because some of the people they are not comfortable with the mnemonics. But another way of remembering is having some mnemonics, the memory techniques. Both the way you can remember. Sometimes I will be comfortable with some mnemonics because I use the mnemonics to solve questions. I used to earlier also. Now also still to remember when I take the class, I use this mnemonics. Maybe it will be helpful for you also. Yeah, use accordingly. So mango more, Maggi feca. Now, what exactly the configuration? See here now. When a manganese is more, students, when a manganese is more, what happens is manganese will interfere. Manganese will interfere. Interfere what? Interfere uptake of dash. Interfere uptake of iron and calcium. Iron and calcium. Uptake of iron and calcium will be interfered, first point. Second point is interfere, manganese interfere, magnesium interferes with enzyme of magnesium, so that magnesium unable to bind with its enzyme. You know that magnesium is a important, we have to bring all the points here. Magnesium is important for DNA synthesis, RNA synthesis, protein synthesis, rubisco, peptidase, hexokinase, ribosome structure, chlorophyll structure, right or wrong? Requirement of magnesium is a very important one. But here magnesium is unable to bind to enzyme because manganese is interfering it. 2 points for interference uptake of iron and calcium and interfering the enzymes of magnesium. Third point, manganese interfere translocation, means movement, translocation of calcium to apical portion, apical parts, preferably to the shoot apex. And apical portion requires calcium because calcium is required for cell wall formation, cell membrane formation, middle lamella formation, spindle fiber formation. All this requires what? Calcium. So, because of that, because the manganese is more, these all the problem occurs. Now, tell me, iron. Iron is required. If iron is not there, it can lead to chlorosis, right or wrong, students? And magnesium, if it is not there, also can lead to chlorosis. Nitrogen, if it is not there, also it can lead to chlorosis, necrosis. Yes, if you see magnesium, if it is not there, it can lead to necrosis. And calcium, if it is not there, also it can lead to what? Necrosis. That means calcium, magnesium, when they are less, it leads to necrosis. That means manganese toxicity symptoms are because of, not because of the manganese, it is because of the deficiency of iron, nitrogen and magnesium. Since iron, magnesium, nitrogen is becoming less, the symptoms like a brown spot and chlorotic vein happens. And that is a very important point. I will write here, students. What is that? The symptoms of manganese toxicity. Symptoms of manganese toxicity is because of deficiency of iron, calcium and magnesium. This has to be, remember, this was a information regarding the manganese toxicity. Just imagine little excess of manganese leads to this much problem. That means how calculatively farmer has to apply these minerals, that is very important. That has to be done with the guidance of the agricultural scientist, remember. So, I am done with the concept of the manganese toxicity. Finally, to ask you, what is the definition for toxicity if a question asked, means I am telling you not a board exam. Okay. Toxicity, when a mineral, when a micronutrient concentration goes on increasing, if it decreases the yield of the plant by 10% dry matter, that word 10% dry matter, this is a point to be noted for the competitive exam, MCQ point it is. Please remember, then the condition is called toxicity. Now, let us see the diagram of that. This is what I was telling. These are all the chlorosis happening, chlorosis, and there is a brown spots here, brown spots you can see in edges. So, chlorotic vein and brown spot is a condition. You can see here also the brown spots, the chlorotic vein. Students, time to discuss regarding the mechanism of absorption of the elements, how these mineral elements are absorbed. Let us understand. Before that, I want everyone to observe this picture, how beautiful picture it is, and what you see a small, are they root hairs? You can see bristles like structure on the root are the root hair. If you tell they are root hair, you are absolutely wrong, because root hairs are microscopic, because they are extension of the epidermal tissues, and epidermal tissue itself is a microscopic, root hair is also microscopic. They are all lateral roots coming out. So, primary, secondary roots, preferably primary roots they are coming. That means, this is the main root called as a primary root. It is a primary root. From the primary root, we find so many of the lateral roots are coming out. That much you remember. Now, it is time to explain regarding the concept of the mechanism of absorption of the mineral elements. Picture will take it later. First, we will come for the explanation now. Listen now. Mechanism of absorption of mineral element. Yes. Students, all of you see here quickly, the minerals, since they are charged, the absorption method will be different. Means the simple diffusion generally becomes difficult, because we tell K plus, Mg plus, they are ionic form, right? Ionic form. And how the scientists studied it? Have they studied it in the isolated cells or tissues, or in the real plant? It was studied in isolated cells or tissues, because it is not so easy to study in the plant itself. It was done with the help of radioisotopic techniques. Okay, done. Now, how they are absorbed? Absorption occurs in two ways, or two phases, I can tell. Two phases. Absorption of mineral occurs in two phases. The first phase and the second phase. There are two phases of absorption, you should remember as it is. The first phase is by passive transport, and the next phase is by active transport. Passive transport means there is no ATP required for the first phase. There is a ATP required. ATP is required for the second phase. And the first phase is a rapid phase actually. Rapid phase. Why rapid? I will tell you. And this is the little slow process. Slow process. These some points I have written now. Now listen now. The first phase occurs by apoplast. The second phase occurs by symplast. This also, so this should be the point, should be noted down. See students here now. For that diagram I will be drawing here. This is the diagram of, these are all the cell membrane I am drawing now. Cell membrane. I can draw in different way. Yes, let me draw like this. Cell membrane. I have drawn cell membrane only here. Yes, cell membrane I have drawn. Now I am drawing cell wall. Yes. Cell membrane, cell wall. Now, in the each cells there will be two phases, two regions. It is called as outer space or external space it is called as, okay, and this is the inner space. What happens? Actually, the minerals like, if I take the minerals like a nitrogen, if I take it, which is in the form of NO3 minus, nitrogen gets absorbed into the through the cell wall, and cell membrane, cytoplasm. Okay, see, the minerals like a nitrate gets absorbed into the cell through the cell wall and remains in the outer surface. It can move like this. It can move like this. It can move from the one cell to another cell, but without crossing cell membrane. Doesn't cross cell membrane. This movement is a very rapid one, which occurs very fast by a mass flow actually, and this process is called as apoplast, and it is a first phase. It is the first phase of absorption of minerals. So I will write here now. So it's no ATP required. It's a rapid process. It's by apoplast, and there will be movement of minerals. The movement of minerals to the what, tell me, outer space, to the outer space. Clear students? Okay. Now that's the one part over. After the first phase, then what happens? Just to see here quickly, let me take it now. It's a cell membrane I have taken, cell membrane. Cell wall also, let me draw it now. Cell wall, already the minerals are present here, they are moving by apoplast. Now the minerals gets entry into the cell from the intercellular space into the cell membrane, and they can cross one cell to another cell through the plasmodesmata. This movement of minerals into the cell through the plasmodesmata or through the cell membrane is called symplast. Clear students? It is from the cell to cell via plasmodesmata, via cell membrane, and this movement is movement of minerals into inner space. Inner space occurs by the active transport, ATP required. It is the second phase of absorption. So absorption occurs in how many phases then? Two phases, first and second phase. I think things are very clear for you. I will repeat if you want quickly. The first phase is a passive transport without expenditure energy. It is a rapid phase because there is no crossing of cell membrane. If it is there, it becomes slow because there is a saturation. Cell membrane minerals has to pass through the carrier proteins. Okay, done. An apoplast movement of minerals also outer space. And Active transport is the second phase where it has to cross cell membrane. It can move from one cell to another cell through the plasmodesmata, and it is a slow process by symplast, and movement of minerals into inner space occurs by symplast. I think things are clear for you. There are many theories of absorption of elements. Still the studies are going on regarding this. Okay, students, this is what I was telling. The movement of minerals through the here is symplast, just crossing the one cell to another cell. It is apoplast, between the cell wall and cell membrane or intercellular space it is moving. Green portion you can see there. Okay, and you might have seen this picture already, where this is the symplast, and the yellow color what you see is the apoplast. Okay. So now the next point I am taking here, students, just bringing one point to your attention. What is that? The mineral absorption. The mineral absorption mostly we are discussing mostly into cell membrane, into cell, mostly into cell by what? By active transport only. Mineral absorption into the cell occurs by active transport only. That is very important. Reason for it. What is the reason for it? One reason is soil has less mineral element compared to cells. Compared to cell tissue, soil has less mineral element. That is the reason its active transport. Second point, that why tell me, if a soil has less mineral element and tissue has a more mineral element, the minerals has to move from the low concentration to high concentration. It has to be active transport. Second point, the mineral elements are charged. They are in ionic form. Since they are in ionic form, it requires the energy. Are you understanding, students? So that is the reason majority of the elements are absorbed by active transport, but some can be absorbed, in passive transport also. How? Maybe by simple diffusion, or maybe by the carrier proteins. Clear, students? Please note down both the points. Now I will be telling regarding two ways of absorption of element, which is the theory is given by the scientists. Let me give idea for you. See all of you here. The one theory is regarding the carrier concept. Carrier or a transmembrane channel concept. According to this, see carefully, here is a lipid bilayer. One layer, another layer. I will just write a representation of two possible lipids only, lipid bilayer. And center of it here, there is a presence of a channel proteins. Channel proteins it's a protein. it's a lipid layer, lipid bilayer. See, it's a soil here, and this is the inside the cell. The mineral elements, the mineral element to be absorbed, they bind to the protein, means it is a carrier protein, right? It is a protein which is a carrier protein or a transmembrane protein. The mineral element solute binds to the protein. After that, the protein mineral complex has been formed. Then the protein starts rotating. The protein starts rotating such a way that rotates such a way that this mineral comes to the inner part of the cell, and mineral gets entered into cell. Clear, students? And the mineral gets entered and new mineral is going to bind to the channel proteins. This is one way called as carrier or transmembrane channel concept. You might have heard this kind of concept even in the facilitated diffusion through a porins in a transporting plant chapter. If you just go through those pages, you will understand this. Second point, this is called ion exchange concept. Ion exchange, and what is that? See here, friends. This is the plant root. The root here, if I take it, not a root here, it's a root only. In the root hair region, explaining becomes difficult for me. It's a root only. So this root has hydrogen ion. Root has a hydrogen ion. How hydrogen ion has come to root hair? Because of respiration. The root undergo more and more respiration, and respiration leads to formation of carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide reacts with water to form bicarbonate, a carbonic acid H2CO3. The H2CO3 will dissociate to H plus and HCO3 minus. That H plus is this H plus. You should understand that this H plus has its own one orbital, and in this orbital the H plus starts oscillating. It starts oscillating in its own orbit. Okay, now here is a soil. Soil also has some minerals like a potassium. If I take it, potassium also has its own orbit where it's oscillating. Now what happens, see here now. Sometimes what happens is the orbits of potassium and hydrogen gets overlapped. Yes, gets overlapped. When they get overlapped, the potassium, instead of the oscillating like this, starts oscillating in the pathway of hydrogen. Similarly, hydrogen starts oscillating in the pathway of potassium, and because of that what happens, potassium gets into the root cell. That means potassium gets absorbed into the root cell. It's one of the method of ion exchange method of absorption of the mineral. Clear, right? Okay. In the olden days, it was thought that the nutrients, the mineral element gets dissolved in the water. They get dissolved in the water, and then along with the water, the mineral gets absorbed into the plant by a mass flow, and that method is not accepted now. Okay, doesn't happen like that. First minerals will enter, they create a gradient, then it makes entry of water. Clear, right? First who enters? First mineral enters, then the root cell becomes more and more hypertonic, which makes absorption of the water. They are not like by a mass flow, their movement is different. Absorption of mineral occurs in one way, absorption of water occurs in a different way. That you should remember. Done. So till now we were discussing regarding mechanism of absorption of the minerals by active as well as passive transport. Now this movement of minerals, the movement of minerals of minerals is called as flux. What is flux? Movement of mineral is called flux. It can be two ways. It can be influx. Influx means movement which is inward, means into the cell, and it can be efflux. And what is efflux? Tell me. Movement outward. Outward means outside the cell maybe. So, the two types of flux. Flux means movement of minerals. It can be influx as well as efflux. With that, we are done with the mechanism of the absorption of the mineral elements. We will be moving on to the next point. And what is that? Okay, soil has mineral. From the soil, it has come to the root cell. From the root cell, it has come to the root xylem now. Root xylem. After root xylem, how it is moved? From the soil to root cell, it occurs by short distance movement. Short distance movement. The short distance movement, already we told, it can be simple diffusion. The movement of the minerals by simple diffusion, which is it may be facilitated transport. Facilitated transport, simple diffusion, and both of them are coming under the passive transport only. And it can be a active transport also, we told, active transport. Clear, students? But these are all the short distance movement. Since they have come to xylem now, movement of the mineral in the xylem, it is called as long distance movement. The long distance movement which is happening in the xylem, means a vascular bundle, is called translocation. Translocation. The question we are discussing now, or the aspect which we are discussing, is that how translocation of mineral takes place. Let us begin that. Translocation of the solutes, how it takes place. Let us begin now. Students, the translocation of mineral. Translocation mineral takes place via xylem stream. Xylem stream. It occurs by a xylem stream. How it was studied actually, we can tell that it is studied by a concept of the root pressure only. By root pressure concept only, it was studied that it is moving by xylem stream because guttated water, the guttated water. What is guttation? The loss of water in the form of droplets by a root pressure theory in the early morning in the herbaceous plant is called guttation. The guttated water, when it is analyzed and it was found to have mineral, that means it is impure. It is not like a transpired water. Transpired water is a distilled water kind of thing. Okay. So, conclusion, the translocation mineral occurs by a xylem stream. Correct. And what is the basis for that? What is the basis? What basis? What is the physiological basis for it? That we have already studied, students. What is that? It's called as transpiration pull theory. Transpiration pull theory is responsible for ascent of sap, and that ascent of sap is responsible for translocation of mineral elements. Clear, right? Remember that. So, the very simple aspect which we have told here now, okay, translocation mineral occurs by xylem stream, by a root pressure, and the basis is the transpiration pull theory, a ascent of sap for this. Done. It's a small aspect. MCQ questions can come from this, please remember. So this is what we were discussing here. This is regarding the one-way movement of the minerals occurring in the xylem vessel. See, here is a xylem vessel where water and minerals are present here. That means water, minerals are now moving as a mass flow, that you should remember. No end walls here, because you know that it's a continuous column because of the cohesion tension theory. I will not discuss once again here. Cohesion tension theory, because of that continuous column has been formed. Okay, thick lignified walls are there. Okay. So not only the two important aspects I told regarding the xylem stream. The xylem stream contains the xylem stream is a method of translocation. Method of translocation is xylem stream. We told 2 points can come in exam. One is the analysis, we told analysis of the xylem sap, which is found to have acidic nature because rich mineral. Xylem sap is having 5.2 pH, acidic in nature. Second, radioisotopic technique. Radioisotopic technique is also another way. If you remember, the calcium, the carbon was radio labeled with a 14, carbon 14, which was responsible for discovery of the Calvin cycle pathway also. Similarly, radioisotopic techniques are used to trace the mineral elements movement. How exactly it is done, in second PUC we will understand that under a concept of autoradiography. Then we will explain it in detail regarding how radioisotopic techniques are really helpful to trace the movement of particular chemicals, because we will be several times we will be discussing regarding that. Done, students. Now we will be moving to the next aspect, soil as a reservoir of essential elements. What exactly that? Let us discuss that. Quickly, soil. The study of soil is called pedogenesis. The pedogenesis, study of soil. Soil is a edaphic factor. It's a edaphic factor. Appeared question earlier in the exam. Edaphic factor. Pedogenesis is the formation of the soil. Pedogenesis is a formation of soil. Soil is formed by a process called weathering. Weathering process leads to formation of soil. Weathering of dash, weathering of rocks. Weathering of the rocks, or cracking or a break of the rock. Okay, so the breakdown of rock, and weathering of the rock leads to formation of soil. Weathering, yes, if you remember little bit idea, lichens helps in weathering process by producing oxalic acid, and mosses helps in weathering process. These all things we have we have studied earlier. Okay, so weathering of the rocks and breaking of the rocks leads to formation of soil. Only two more points I will discuss regarding soil. And what is that? Soil contains mineral elements. Mineral elements. Hope everyone agree with me. Soil contains mineral elements, both macro as well as micronutrients. Except that we discuss about the elements like which is obtained by atmospheric carbon, obtained by carbon dioxide. Leave that. But still, a bit of the carbon can be absorbed through the roots also as bicarbonates. It has been seen in tissue culture plants. Mineral elements. Second, it's a source of water, right? Source of water. And soil is the reservoir of some microbes, soil microbes like we can take the example rhizobium, which is helping in fixation of nitrogen, is present in the where? Soil. And soil helps in anchorage to the roots. Anchorage to roots. Very simple aspect, students. I will not take much time here. I'll just see, it supplies mineral and holds water. It harbors nitrogen fixing bacteria like the rhizobium and other microbes. Other microbes we'll discuss later. It supplies air to the roots, very important. If there is a soil, if it is a clay kind of soil, then the aeration becomes difficult, and it acts as a matrix that stabilizes the plant and gives anchorage for the what? Anchorage for the plants. Now, if soil has less nutrients, if a soil has less nutrients, then we supplement it. Then we supplement the nutrients in the form of fertilizers. And fertilizers can be organic as well as inorganic fertilizer. I am speaking about inorganic fertilizer preferably. The fertilizers contains both, has macronutrients and even the micronutrients. Macro as well as micronutrients are present in the fertilizers. This is the point I want you should remember it. Because it can come for exam. The fertilizer contains only macronutrients. Wrong. It contains macro as well as micronutrients. With that, we are coming to the almost end of today's class. Students, in this class we were studying regarding the toxicity of the mineral element, preferably manganese toxicity. The manganese toxicity happens, tell me when? The manganese toxicity happens when the manganese absorption becomes more. It leads to problem regarding 3 elements. One is magnesium, iron, and one more is calcium. Later we discussed regarding the mechanism of absorption of the mineral elements by passive initially, then by active. Apoplast initially, then by symplast. Then we told soil is a reservoir of the mineral elements. Just now we told regarding the soil, if it is having less amount of the mineral elements, then you have to supplement it by giving in fertilizers, maybe having macro as well as micronutrients. Okay. In the next class, we will be studying regarding the the mineral element which is required in high amount, greatest amount to the plants, and that mineral element is going to be nitrogen. So, regarding nitrogen, we will be discussing in detail in the upcoming class. Until then, keep revising everything, students. Let us meet in the next class. Thank you.